Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm joined by one of Canada's biggest rising stars, the one who represented Canada at the youngest age at 15. She's currently absolutely turning it up in Portugal. It is none other than Olivia Smith. Olivia, pleasure to have you on. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's the day off after a solid win yesterday in the Cup?
It's amazing. It's nice to finally have a day off. We've been pretty busy the last couple weeks, so finally getting a chance to relax before a pretty heavy and hectic week coming up. So
It's only going to get more busy now with the Gold Cup. You've got Benfica now in the final after you booked the ticket.
yeah.
How's that run in the cup been?
It's been challenging, but I mean, another chance to play a great opponent, so definitely looking forward to it. We also play them towards the end of the season. So very excited to play an opponent like them. They're really good. So yeah.
Good preparation. And then you've also got Racing Almada, who you just beat on the weekend. So it's going back
Yeah.
to back.
Yes.
Is that fun to just beat an opponent and then make sure that you can do it again in a few days, or does
It's
that make things trickier?
it definitely makes it trickier, having three games against the same opponent to win three times in a row it's very difficult. So just got to keep a good mindset with the team and hope for the best.
Now, a very important question before we jump into breaking all things down. Is
Mhm.
it soccer or is it football?
It's football
It's
here.
football.
Yeah, but when we're talking in Canada, it's soccer. So
Okay, we'll be using those terms interchangeably today. Was it hard for you to switch to using football when you moved to Portugal because you had been just saying soccer when you were in Canada and the US, or like how did that play out?
honestly, I'm still going in between the two. I don't like it just happens naturally, like soccer, yeah. And then
Yeah.
here, I have to think a little bit before I even talk. It's football when
And
I'm
then
talking European. Yeah.
the European lingo. But
hmm
Olivia, before you obviously made it out to sporting in Portugal, you were born in North York, here in the Toronto area in Ontario, Canada. But you grew up in Whitby. It's kind of like a smaller town,
hmm
different to North York. Can you talk to me a little bit about your childhood, kind of growing up in Whitby and when soccer became a thing for you?
So growing up in Whitby, to begin with, it wasn't very diverse.
Yeah.
So being multicultural and being in a predominantly white neighborhood was honestly a little bit difficult for me.
Hmm.
And I didn't start playing soccer until I got into the Whitby Club at 3 years old, just for kicks. And yeah, I mean, I moved through a lot of clubs. So I went from Whitby into Oshawa, into Ajax, and kind of made my way into the West End,
Yeah.
going into Markham and then North Toronto and ending up in NDC,
Hmm.
where I ended up being integrated into the youth program for the national team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started at 3 and I moved around to a lot of clubs in my youth career. So
Why the a lot of moving? Because I feel like they're all relatively close to Whitby, where your
yeah.
parents probably could drive you back and
Mhm.
forth. But was it like on purpose that you were trying different clubs and different academies, or it was just different coaches that you were willing to work around with?
It was mainly due to coaches, just to, learn something different from somebody new, a new team, new dynamic. All coaches have a different philosophy, so I got to learn from each coach that I had been with within my youth career, which is nice.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just where the best fit would be for me. And I didn't feel like I found the, say, perfect fit, which is why I kept moving around and moving around.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, that also came down to what my parents also thought would be best for me as well, not just myself. So
Bad for sure. Did you dabble around with different sports, or was it kind of just
I
soccer filling
did.
up? Okay, what sports did you play?
So, well, in school, obviously, I played every sport. I
Yeah.
would go from basketball, volleyball, track and field, even a sport called chook ball that we had.
Oh, what's
Um,
that?
it's a sport, so you play with your hands,
Uh-huh.
and there's like a bouncy net, and you have to like throw the ball off the net and some weird rules.
Interesting.
And outside of school, I was in Taekwondo
Ah.
until I was, I think, about maybe 8 or 9 years old,
So you
which
played
I
it for a
loved.
fair bit.
Yeah. Um, and at that time, I actually had to pick one. which one I wanted to choose, soccer, taekwondo, and it was honestly, it's crazy to say it was a bit of a hard decision for me. I
Really?
really enjoyed like the fighting and stuff.
Yeah.
But ended up choosing soccer in the long run and probably the best decision I've ever made.
It's
Yeah.
certainly checked out. So that's good. Well, it's good that soccer is still somewhat of a physical sport. Is that where you
Mhm.
get a lot of your powerful shots from that Taekwondo base?
I definitely think that's where a lot of my technique and power comes from. So thank you, Taekwondo, for that. And I think that's something I have an advantage over a lot of people is that I got to do that at such a young age and
Yeah.
build the technique and the power from when I was young.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
You said you kind of knew you had to choose between soccer and Taekwondo. Did you see something that was special in you, or I guess your parents and coaches around you that were watching you play and go from program to another and were like, yes, like she's got something special here?
I mean, something that my dad always said that I was when I was growing up is that, like she has something different in her. Since I was a little kid. I mean, I was always the one that so ball focused. I'd take the ball from my own teammates at such a young age, just want to score goals and just one of those like crazy athletic kids.
Yeah.
And I've been watching football since I was younger, like religiously with my dad every night, all the time.
Hmm.
So I think that was the main reason why I chose soccer. My dad saw something special in me, and I felt like I can make the most out of football.
Hmm.
And I was more driven in football as well. So
Who were your favorite teams to watch growing up, or I guess certain players that you really.
Christine Sinclair and Marta were my two idols, goats at the time. Yeah.
And how great we'll get to it in a moment, but both of these players you're able to meet and obviously play with Christine Sinclair. But on
Mhm.
that, as you were growing up and kind of like, yes, I wanted to play soccer, was it hard to imagine going professional in Canada or being a professional Canadian soccer player when professional soccer doesn't even exist for girls in Canada?
I think not even just looking at Canada, I think when I was younger, it wasn't even broadcasted as much. I mean, like I would be going on YouTube to watch these videos of my idols, and it wasn't necessarily like on TV at the time.
Yeah.
To even think about playing pro anywhere or just being a part of like the national team, I feel like at the time it felt like a little bit of a reach.
Mm.
And thinking about how many females there are playing the sport, I mean, I don't know, it's like taking a chance on something. So I'm very excited to see where things are going now.
Mhm.
All the broadcasting and all the publicity going for women's soccer is amazing to see. And even now, me being in Portugal, doing something that I've always been dreaming of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you have a younger sister who also plays soccer, if I'm
Yeah,
correct. So
yes.
do you ever think about how now she gets to grow up and see obviously this big boom in women's soccer, but also her sister going professional in Europe?
I think she's excited. I mean, I think now that she sees me kind of living out my dream, it makes it even more reachable for her to think about her dreams.
Hmm.
And it's cool because last year, I think in November, she came to visit me in Portugal and she had the
Ah,
opportunity to be in that little pro environment. She came in to train with our youth program and she
yeah.
absolutely loved it. So I'm very happy for her to get that exposure as well at such a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of following in your footsteps now, even though it's
Yeah.
big footsteps to follow.
Yeah.
Even at such a young age, when you were 12, again, kind of playing around different clubs, you debuted for the youth team for Canada. Were you used to playing with age groups bigger than you? Because at 12, it's like, what even is that, grade 8,
Yeah.
7
Yeah, it's
maybe?
about grade 8, grade 7, yeah.
How was that for you?
Well, growing up, ever since I was in the little leagues, I guess, I always played either year up or 2 years up,
Mm,
my whole career. So I mean, I didn't really feel much of a difference. I was always used to being with girls older, and I think that also helped in my maturity growing up. I feel like I grew up a little quicker than
yeah,
the typical
12-year-old.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So but I definitely think that benefited me um to be where I am now.
Because you've done a lot of things when you were young, 3 years after you debuted for the youth teams, and obviously you went on to play with them afterwards. But at 15, you debuted for Canada, the youngest ever to do it for Canada. When you got
Mhm.
that call and you jumped into camp, and then you went on to play against Brazil with some of the biggest idols around, like that must have been such a surreal experience for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, something that I've always told everybody when they ask about like what happened in that moment is they called me to go warm up. So I go and warm up and I go take my seat. It's close to the end of the game. So I'm like, okay, it's almost the end of the game, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing? You're going in. And I'm like, huh? Like, there's no way I'm about to play against one of my idols that I've looked up to and one of the best teams in the world
hmm
for my first international debut with the women's team. It was just a surreal moment for me.
And I believe you subbed off Christy Sinclair when you came on.
Yeah.
Does that just make it that much more special?
Yeah. A
Were
hundred
you
percent.
were you nervous? Like, was there a lot of nerves? You were kind of just like
I
thrown into
think,
this, and it was like Christy
yeah.
Sinclair subbing you on.
Yeah, I think there was just so much going on. I didn't even have time to fully process it that I kind of just went out there, did my thing, and it wasn't until I realized and felt everything. Like it was all overwhelming. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just played in my first match ever for the national team, and Sinclair put me on. Basically, I subbed up with Sinclair, and
Yeah.
Marta was within the vicinity of everything happening. So
Mhm.
I think it was just a lot for a 15-year-old to even like comprehend what was going on.
Did you like have a regular day at high school the next day? Because I can't imagine just having to like pack things up after that and go to school.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. So I went to Bill Crothers,
Sports school.
and sports school, yeah. So they had announced that I had gone and things like
Yeah.
that. So it was cool coming back to, a couple of people congratulating me and
Mhm.
everyone being so supportive of me as well. So
That's brilliant. And that school definitely puts a lot of effort into their sports programs, and no wonder they're able to produce folks like you. But during
yeah.
that time, you were still very busy. Even school aside, you were playing League One, you were
Mhm.
playing with the different teams in different nations, or sorry, not different nations, but different teams, and in terms of youth and the senior squad as well. How did everything come along before you decided you wanted to go to university? Because I remember your dad also once said that they treated a lot of the trips that they had to the US and take a look at universities is almost like a vacation trip. But for you, it wasn't so much a vacation because you had to decide
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
How was that decision after, spending a lot of time in Canada, knowing that you were going to move abroad and make
Mhm.
a big decision of which university you were going to commit to?
I definitely think the best thing that I could have done and my family themselves could have done was
Mhm.
visit as many schools as possible just to get a feel of what the environment's like, what the like team is like, what the coaches are like. And it was a very tough decision, and but at the end of the day it came down to which coach do I feel like will help me grow the most. It's not necessarily, oh, where it's nice and sunny or where are all the parties at. It was
Yeah.
more like where can I grow and how can I get to the next level of playing pro. So at the end of the day, it was a family decision, but a majority came from me. And it was Florida State University with Mark Krikorian. He really sold me on his philosophy. The team itself was amazing as well. So yeah.
You spent a little bit of time with Florida and then move things over to Penn State. Was that adjustment period a little bit difficult, moving away from home and kind of having to settle in a new environment completely?
I feel like the adjustment wasn't as difficult as it could have been because I
Mhm.
had been traveling for national team so often since I was 12.
Yeah.
So I was kind of used to being away from home a lot, but at least it was just across the border. It wasn't
Yeah.
too much of a hassle for my parents or for me to go back and forth.
hmm
But yeah, it definitely could have been a lot more difficult for me, but I feel like being away from home so often, it wasn't too much of an adjustment for me.
It kind of had prepared you for what was going to come,
Yeah.
which is eventually moving across continents.
Yeah.
But before we moved across continents, you announced that you were going to go professional.
Mhm.
Again, I feel like that's a pretty tough decision to have. Were you consulting your parents like you had with a lot of major decisions? And was it again reaching out to different players, possibly some of your Canadian teammates to kind of consult and talk to them? Like, how did that process look for you at, again, still such a young age?
Yeah. The process for me was, well, when I first did go to Penn State, it was very difficult. I came in with an injury from our
Mm,
U20 World Cup, an MCL injury, and it was very difficult to get playing time. And I also wasn't reaching my full potential there either.
mhm.
I feel like it was very difficult for me and finding my place within that environment.
Yeah.
So with that being said, my dream was ultimately to go pro. And it was also a talk that I had with my parents of, do I want to go to school for first, or should we just take the risk and go to university? So
Yeah.
we agreed that it'd be best to get the experience just to see how it is, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
But we were at a point where we think we need something different, and I think the pro opportunity was looking really good for me and decided to do that.
After you announced it, again, a lot of things were up in the air. Then before you even know it, the World Cup rolls around and you were invited into the pre-camp roster. And then we've all seen the video that obviously Canada Soccer has posted of you coming into the room and Beth Priestman letting you know that you've been chosen. And the first thing that comes out of your mouth is stop, like in disbelief.
Yeah.
We've seen it from behind the screen, but for you joining that pre-camp, knowing that there was a huge golden opportunity there for you to then be told that you are part of the 23 player roster. How did that work out from your point of view? Because we'd seen it on camera.
Well, initially, me getting a last minute call to join for pre-camp was, I mean, just a dream. And I kind of looked at it as, I'm not just here to fill in a training spot. I feel like I have an opportunity to make this team,
Hmm.
regardless of my age. I haven't been called in a while either.
Yeah.
So I definitely think this is my chance. So I feel like I worked hard within the camp and I proved that I should be there. But obviously, finally hearing it, I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe that he's making my dream come true by
Yeah.
inviting me to play on the world's biggest stage. So
What was the first thing that you did after you left that room?
I
After
called my
speaking
parents right
about.
away. I called my parents right away. They weren't even answering me.
Oh,
Um, I was just like crying, waiting for them to call me back. My mom didn't even answer. I told my dad, he started crying. It was just chaos. But it was a really good moment for all of us.
how's it been working for with Beth Priestman and playing under her? Because she was the one who gave you your cap at 12 for the U15 and obviously has lots of belief in you to even take you to the World Cup and rightfully so. But what kind of head coach is she to play with and to play under and work with?
I think she's an amazing head coach. I love her drive and her, I guess you can say, confidence that she bleeds into the team.
Yeah.
And I'm also thankful to work with her because I know that she has a lot of confidence in me, and that helps me as a player. Being in an environment with like talented, experienced players. So I absolutely love playing with under her. Sorry, and I can't wait for more years with her. She just signed a new contract as well.
Yeah.
So definitely looking forward to it.
Does it help that you had already worked with her when you were younger, that it kind of took a bit away from that intimidation that I feel like you would have stepped into a completely new head coach for the senior squad?
Yeah, I definitely think it helps being in the youth specifically with her.
Yeah.
Being at such a young age, working with her, and then, getting to work with her again a couple years later is really well.
And how was the World Cup? I know obviously it didn't go to anybody's plan for Canada, but for you to be in that environment with obviously a lot of eyes, a lot of pressure, but still you wanted to enjoy every moment of it. Was it hard? Like, how was that World Cup for you and being with the Canada camp at such a high stakes?
For me personally, I feel like I didn't feel too much outside pressure. I mean, I like to control what I can control, and that's just at the end of the day, my performance, my attitude,
Yeah.
and things like that. But along with that, there was also a lot of distractions going on for us as a team, with the CSA and things like that. So, I mean, we did what we could, and for me personally, I tried not to indulge in that too much. Also, being younger, I like to
Yeah.
just focus on the things that I can control rather than all the politics and stuff.
And things that you basically can't really control so much. And I think
Yeah.
the timing certainly made it much harder for the squad to do what they wanted, but even for the players to stay focused. Who have you enjoyed playing with most with Canada? And I mean, we have to touch on Christine Sinclair, who you said you grew up watching her as an idol
Yeah.
because you're an '04, if I'm correct. So
Yes.
she had been playing and she'd been scoring before you were even born, and now you're
Hmm.
playing alongside her on the same field.
Yep. I mean, it's amazing. And I mean, just even her as a human, she's an amazing human, humble, down to earth. And she doesn't let everything that's going outside, affect her or anything or her personality, which is
Yeah.
one thing that I absolutely admire about her. And that's something that I want to take away for myself in my career. But like, even for example, in training, she's just world class all the time. Every training session, world class finishing, world class everything, attitude. So she's definitely someone I can continue to look up to.
I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons on the pitch from the likes of Sinclair and the many, many talented players on that squad. But what are some lessons that you've been able to take from them off the pitch?
Again, humility is the biggest one, I think, especially as a Canadian. I think that's
Hmm.
something that we take a lot of pride in.
For sure.
And just being down to earth. I mean, we have such a great group of girls. Like
Yeah.
Jessie is
Yeah.
definitely one of them that she's amazing.
Yeah.
But just not to like pick one person, but it's the whole team that has the same attitude and everything, which is really nice to have.
Hmm. And who have you feel like you've already been able to build a partnership with so far?
It's a great question. I mean, it's kind of difficult because I like to get around with everybody,
Good.
not just stick to one person, especially because I'm younger. I like
Yeah.
to expand my group, whether that's going out for coffee with some of like more of the experienced girls or also
Hmm.
just playing games with some of the other ones. But yeah, I wouldn't say I have like one specific
Good.
person.
You're being a sponge, absorbing
Yeah,
everything from
yeah,
those around you. World Cup page folds, and you signed, in fact, you signed your, or it was announced that you signed your first professional contract whilst you were at the World Cup.
yeah.
Um, what was it that sporting appealed to you and playing in Portugal that you knew you wanted to commit that first professional contract to them?
I think, well, first off, Portugal is an amazing country. Even just it's starting to get on the map for women's football, which is very exciting. And also knowing that Chloe Lacasse had also made her mark here, it kind of drew me to come here to start my career. I feel like it's the perfect way to kick it off.
Yeah.
And just the sporting staff themselves, the scouts, the assistant coaches, head coach, just everyone is amazing. My teammates are amazing. And I got to visit before, and I really liked what I saw. And I just felt like it was the right fit for me.
Were you able to chat with Chloe and see how her experience was in the league before you were able to make a decision?
I actually think I'd made my decision before I'd spoken to her,
Yeah.
but like everything's online.
Mhm.
I read everything. And it was very convincing to hear about what Portugal has to offer and how it's growing in women's football.
And how have you, I guess, adapted to the settling in, the food, the language? Has it been a little bit tough to completely move away from, what you were used to with Canada and the US to now in Portugal?
Honestly, I feel like it's similar to university. I don't think
Mm.
my adjustment period was as difficult as it could have been. And I wouldn't say I'm familiar with the language, but I studied Spanish a lot. And
Yeah.
my mom's side is also Latina, so I kind of understand for the most part, and the languages are very similar.
Mhm.
And I'm actually taking Portuguese classes through
Oh.
sporting.
Yeah.
So I'm learning while I'm here. But the food is amazing here as well, and the culture is amazing, and just the people all around are amazing as well.
What's your game day routine before a game in with Sporting?
I've had to change it a little bit
That's
because
okay.
usually,
Test and
usually I'd,
trial.
I'd have pancakes before every game, but that's just not much of a thing here.
Oh, okay.
But um, it's just one of those simple things, like which boot I put on first. And
Mm.
I have like these two little charms that I have. I always have to lay it out before my games.
Mhm.
I always talk to my parents before my games as well. But yeah, just like the little things that stay the same.
Is time difference a bit of a challenge before you have to call your parents? Like you're calling them 6 a.m. here and you're like, I'm going for a game now. Or is it hard
Honestly,
for you to work around?
honestly, my parents are always awake. I
Okay.
swear. Like my mom's up at like 5 or 4 a.m. My dad's up about to go to work. So it kind of works out. It's not too much of an issue.
Any superstitions that you guys do as a team in the locker room before you head out, or everybody kind of like zones into their own thing and does what they want to do?
everyone has their own thing. So it's kind of nice just to have your own thing and not have to worry about, oh wait, we can't do this or that. But yeah, we all
And
have our own things to do.
how have you enjoyed the league so far with League BPI? Because like you mentioned, it's certainly growing. There's been a lot of foreigner players going there, choosing it as
Mhm.
their home to grow and develop and make a name for themselves. But for you, how have you enjoyed it, and what are sort of things that stood out to you from the league?
I've loved it so far. And I definitely think this is a place where I really fit in and I'm able to grow, but also excel with this team. And the soccer IQ here is very high. It's very technical possession. I feel like at least my team is very possession-based team,
Mhm.
which I love. And it's nice because I feel like I have that little bit of advantage in terms of my physicality and being in that NCAA program as well, which I can
Yeah.
bring here. And I think that's also an advantage that a lot of other girls have coming from North America into here,
Mhm.
is cool. So,
And I feel like we've seen a lot of goals, like incredible goals, long shot goals, and you even posted, and even Sporting posts a lot of training videos of you taking those same shots.
yeah.
What's the training environment around that they've allowed you to feel comfortable and confident to be able to take these risky shots that are not always going to end on the back of the net, unless you're taking it. But it's certainly
Mhm.
something that developing players sometimes shy away from. So,
Yeah.
can you just tell me through how they've been able to put an environment around you with the coaches and the players to put you in situations where you're comfortable taking one would call risky shots?
hmm I have to say it's just the repetition, having them let me, take reps of those shots and also just the encouragement even in training, whether if it's in like a game environment to encourage me to even take those opportunities. And I think
Hmm.
it's important like for the encouragement and for players to want it.
Yeah,
And I'm very fortunate to have staff and players support the decisions that I make on the field to
yeah,
make those risky plays. And I think it's important as a team that we do that as well for everybody, not just the one or two players, for everybody. And
yeah.
within training, it's good because we get a lot of reps. Yeah.
And kind of I know we're a little bit short of time in here, but you play across the three positions up front and even sometimes at the midfield. What do you think your ideal position is, and what do you think are some strengths that stand out for you?
I have to say, since I've been here, the right wing is kind of my spot.
Yeah.
And I would say that because of my 1v1 ability, I love taking players on 1v1 facing up. But even my physicality and speed to get by players as well. So I definitely think left or right wing, but mainly right wing is where I've been playing a lot,
Mhm.
is where I fit the best in.
Honing the craft on the wings.
hmm
Do you have a favorite type of goal to score, or do you have a favorite goal that you've scored so far?
That goal I scored against Valdez is definitely the free kick goal, has to be my favorite goal of my career so far.
It looked like you obviously celebrated with your teammates, but you didn't go like on a crazy run or anything. Were you that calm in your head when you saw it go into the net?
No, I was like, damn, like that it dipped. I couldn't even process any of it. I was like, yep, I can't wait to see that over again. And then after the game was this, I'm like, I kind of did my whole celebration after the game. But yeah, it was a great moment with my teammates.
I think, like you mentioned earlier, you've always been playing with groups kind of older than you, playing with those who are a little bit more physical than you in terms of like, obviously they're bigger bodies. What's been your mindset of just going into these environments, knowing that you're kind of sometimes seen as a bit of a rookie, yet able to impress? Like that can't be an easy situation to be in.
It's definitely not easy, but the way I kind of look at it is this is where I can learn from other people. This is where I gain experience, and this is where I can have conversations with people to learn and
Mhm.
to just grow as not even just a person, as a player, both on and off the field. And I think it's important not to shy away from opportunities like this because it would only benefit in the future.
You just mentioned the future, which is great segue to where I was going to ask you next. But what are
Mhm.
certain things or I guess goals that you want to achieve in the next 5 years or so in your club career or even international career, actually? We'll open it up.
Okay. Okay, so for club,
Yeah.
with this club, I want to go to Champions League. And it's nice because we've earned another spot, so the
Hmm.
top two teams. We're in the running right now, so I'm very excited about that. especially for this year, Olympics are coming up.
Yeah.
18-player roster.
Hmm.
Definitely going to be tough, but there's still time. And I'm definitely looking forward to competing for a spot for that as well. But as of right now, I'm kind of just focusing on this year. I haven't even really looked that far down the line yet, but yeah, open to anything, but just looking forward to this year.
I think it's going to be a very exciting year. The Summer Olympics, like you mentioned, are going up. This is a competition that Canada is known to do good in, and they go into it as the reigning champions. Last and most important question here that I ask any Canadian player that comes on is, how do you take your Tims?
I have to do an everything bagel,
Mm,
toasted, extra toasted with cream cheese,
yeah.
and an ice cap.
Ooh, cannot go wrong with an ice cup and a bagel. Is there any
Never.
Tim Hortons near you where you live?
No, they don't have Timmy's here. They have Starbucks.
But not Timmy's.
No, I haven't had Timmy's, I think, in like 2 years. I know.
When you're
I
back, when you're back
that's
in
the
here,
it's the first thing I'm getting, I think.
out of the airport, straight to Timmy's.
Yep. 100%. I already told my parents.
Skip everything else. We're going straight to Timmy's.
Yep.
Olivia, thank you so much for joining me today here. A pleasure to talk to you. And I think all of us are going to be rooting for you to continue killing it this year and hopefully get a spot to that Olympics.
Thank you for having me.
Of
Thanks.
course.